Yo, 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 yo. What is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mystic Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to go over and give you kind of a short, sweet, and nice update on what's happening here in SS1-2. There has just been more developments, and this is going to be kind of a multi-parted video. The first half, I'm just going to kind of give you a lay of the land. We'll look at some stats from the boards and kind of show you what's been happening. There's been some merging, or better yet, kind of consolidation of power and troops. And then on the second half of this, I want to talk about what my view is, and again, I'm going to try and do my best I can as far as if I want to make a second video, but I do want to touch on how the center fortresses, by being able to kind of place them fluidly in anywhere that you want, has its kind of pros and cons for how it's been impacting the landscape here in SS1-2. So first, let's start off with giving you a lay of the land, right? So for those who are new to the channel, or if you've been keeping up, let me go over the two sides, right? In short, you have TA, you have TMS, you have TM, and there's also GRZ and UEH. That's kind of, for the most part, really it's GRZ more so over UEH, but they're there as well. On the other side, you have the SS alliances. You have GOD, BDL, IDL. You got NT45. I think GOZ is up here as well. And that kind of makes up the two sides. To show you this in an easier way, let's take a look at some boards. Alliance merits is probably the easiest way. So typically this is how merits work, right? So as far as how they carry over. If you leave an alliance and you join another one, your merits will follow. So it's pretty easy, as an example, if you look at the alliance merits, to basically tell you who the most active alliances are, right? And you can see here from how this looks, you can see kind of a big drop off from 8 to 9. For all intents and purposes, you pretty much have 8 active alliances at this point. Right, you have TM, TA, TMS, and GRZ, right? And then on the other side, you have SS18, NT45, BDL, and GOD, right? So you kind of have this 4-on-4 situation that has occurred, and we'll show you that as well. So if you look at TM, 2.4, almost 2.5 bill, TA, 2.68, almost 2.7 bill, BDL is almost 2.1 bill, you have GOD, who's at 1.8 bill, you got NT45 1.7 bill, TMS is 1.46, almost 1.5 bill. You got SS18 at 1.33 billion, and then lastly GRZ is at 1.64, almost 1.7 billion. Then when you look at IDL, right now IDL is there too as well, right? I mean, obviously I shouldn't necessarily count them. I mean, they're at a bill, almost 1.1 billion, right? So they're definitely fighting. And then if you look at SS11, that's kind of where it drops, right? So then UEH, right, 753 million, almost 754, right? So, I mean, they're there in the mix. They're helping out a little bit. And don't get me wrong, right? I mean, probably the bigger drop-off, really, when you consider it, is probably IDL to SS11. But this is a big enough drop-off, right? So I guess you could argue it's 5v4, right? Let me correct that. But point is that if you're looking at kind of where we're at now, right, the TA Union side, and I'll just refer to TA Union and SS Union just to keep things simple, because otherwise it's going to take me forever to say all the names every single time. You have the TA Union that is pushed over to this side, and at the moment, they are pretty much just making work of their opponents, right? So you have NT45, who's losing this CF. This will be gone in 3 hours or less. You have some flags over here that are probably, waiting, so to speak, to be destroyed. If we work our way north, you can see that there's a flag that's being built right now by TM. This will be done in an hour or so. And then once it is, they'll be able to go over here and connect to this BDL core fortress, right? And so they'll kind of be able to take the core fortress or remove it and then go ahead and take the pass, depending. So for me, that seems to kind of be the pace or where they're at. You can also see here that this GOD CF is now being destroyed, right? You got, what, 2 hours and 14 minutes left on that one. Along with, I don't know if they're pushing north. I think they just removed a flag, so I don't think there's a need for it. But you can now see that they're also building a flag up here that Yasan just started. Nothing's really happening north of here, so like these 3 flags, nothing for the most part is actually going on. It seems as though the TA Union side is really focused on this NT45 and the GOD fortresses, and then obviously working the way to BDL as well, right, which should be happening once they end up finishing their connection. Now, the thing that we're looking at here is where does it go from here? Now we kind of have to look at the next steps, because there's not obviously a lot of fighting that's happening now, right? I mean, if we're going to catch any fighting at this point, it's probably going to be more so in spurts. And I want to, and we're going to transition to kind of talking about the CF placement here and there in a moment. But when it comes to the TA Union side, right, you can notice how they kind of won the pass area. And then after they won the pass area, instead of, kind of slow building their territory out, they basically just went for the CF drops. They, moved all their units over, dropped the CFs, and then started building. And for all intents and purposes, let's just say that there's a good chance that that's just going to end up occurring again, right? So they'll build out here because they're already close, which means they can reduce the amount of flags that they have to use overall in total. They'll end up fighting it out. We'll probably see some pass rallies back and forth from the alliances, depending on how long that lasts. And then if the SS Union side is unable to hold, then you'll end up seeing the TA Union side push through, right? They'll probably clear out these forts, these 4 or 5 forts that you see along here, maybe the SS-18 fort. And then once that happens, they'll just start pushing through. And the idea, or the assumption would be, is that they'll probably just send troops up here, and then they'll probably just throw down some CFs along here and just basically keep doing the same thing, right? So they'll push in. They'll probably finally get to NT45. They'll get to orange. Hang on, who's orange again? Let me click here. Right, there you go, IDL, right? So they'll get to IDL. They'll get to BDL. And then, maybe they'll work their way all the way around and eventually go down here to GOD and GOZ. So it is interesting, because what started as healthy back and forths on the passes, and I'm probably going to make a separate video on this, but my brief idea here is almost making me think that maybe they shouldn't have fought on the passes, and or if they did fight, doing it, maybe assessing the value of fighting on the passes by maybe doing it a little bit more of an organized way. Like an example would be, have Burning and Does basically just hold defenses, right? Just put those 2 players in there on each of the passes, let them defend, and then you just funnel the top 200 players and you split them between those 2 alliances and you just play defense all day, right? To me, now I don't think they did that, to my knowledge. However, that I think would have been the better play to do, right? So you have your 2 top players on your side defending, because Burning at one point was the strongest player, right? Now, depending on how much tech he had, VIP level versus Ghost, and then Junie, I'm sure he was right there, if not above. And he clearly had a little bit more troops trained as well when you consider all of that. So if you're defending the pass, you're going to take less losses. So to me, I guess it makes sense if they would have stuck those 2 players there on one pass and the other, right? So maybe you put Burning on the TA side pass, and then or maybe on the TM pass, because that's where Ghost was, and then you let Does deal with Junie, and then maybe Does and Asura can swap, because Asura would be the number 3 player that they have on their team, and then you just basically split your top 200, top 300 players between those 2 alliances, and then that way you can have the strongest players on your side filling those garrison defenses, right? And then, of course, you have the other alliances supporting, and you just kind of do counter pushes or pass swaps, right? Whatever rallies aren't happening, and then you kind of do your intermediate or your interval-based push-outs. Now, to me, that seems like that would have been a better play. It will be curious. I might have to reach out to Does and Burning and just ask them, if that was something that they did at all. Did they maybe realize it at one point, but it might have just been too late? What was the game plan? Were they analyzing reports? Were they paying attention and looking at favorable trades? Did it just not matter how well they tested certain things or how well they coordinated with all the members? Maybe Ghost and Junie just had a little better tech and maybe a little bit better developed heroes. So there was just, no matter how well they prepped, they just weren't ever going to get favorable trades. Again, I don't know. I haven't seen those reports. I haven't asked those questions. However, that is something that I plan to do. So now we move over to kind of the situation of let's transition, right? So now I want to briefly talk about my view. And again, I'll most likely make a separate video on this so it can really be clear. But now I'm starting to wonder, right? Because some people have suggested this before, where it's, well, do we limit the CF building, right? Instead of allowing, like, I think someone, I don't know if it was Steelheart or someone else who said, you know what, allow the alliances based on their starting region to be able to build their center fortresses wherever they want. But when it comes to Zone 1, they have to build out, right? So the example here would be, if you think about, who do I have here? Hang on, who's purple? UEH. Hang on, where's the other ones? Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I guess I didn't have it. Anyways, okay. So let's just say TA, right? So you got TATM. They're here in Sophrostia. They could place their center fortresses wherever they want in Sophrostia, but if they want to expand into another region, they have to flag out the whole way. But then, once they get into right, Zone 2 and Zone 3, right, you can build your alliance forts, right, wherever you want, right? Because you have to extend out, but you can build those there and then continue to extend. Because the fact is, you're going to use less flags to get to Zone 2 and Zone 3 than you would if you were trying to build all the way around Zone 1. So it is interesting to me because now I'm thinking about it a little bit more on, well, maybe there is something to that, right? Now, let me point something out here as well. The reason I say that is because it's not because of the way that the thing is playing out with, you know, the strength of TA and TM and right, how hard they're fighting, along with really how hard everyone's fighting, but with what they've been able to do, it's more about not having the game just become like just passes all day long, right? And that's not to say that it will be, because eventually at a certain point in time, you know, the TA Union side will have to flag out to remove all the fortresses. But the thing is that they can do it more efficiently with just doing kind of random CF drops, right? So it almost feels like there is something to that, where I'd rather see more open field fighting and battles that could potentially take a while to conclude, rather than center fortresses just being dropped and you being able to pretty much cut off someone's legs. You know, you also reduce the recuperation time as well, the healing time, the replenishment time. And so part of me now looks at that and says, you know what, maybe that person was really onto something. And now I almost feel like I'm a little bit more in favor of that. Now, don't get me wrong, right? If the SS Union side ended up holding TA and TM and they started pushing, I'm sure they would probably do the exact same thing, right? Except they would probably flag out here, you know, remove, maybe drop some CFs around here, and then either build out more or remove those and then drop some CFs here at this, right? So it's not to say that they wouldn't do the same thing, but my point is that regardless of who ended up winning this pivotal pass exchange at NUVOLA Sophrostia, was going to be the ones that we basically more or less saw that happening from. What I'm saying now is that if we wanted to elongate and stretch the fighting, where players wouldn't feel as maybe early potentially demoralized because of the fact that there's no kind of rest time, or at least kind of like a soft cap, right? Like a gracious rest, if you will, until the fighting starts again, where instead of TA, TM, GRZ, etc., had to flag all the way out through NUVOLA in order to get to the passes, right? That could have potentially increased the resistance that we ended up seeing from the SS Union side here at the DARALAN NUVOLA level 1 adjacent passes. Instead, I think there was only some minimal resistance, and now you're kind of at this point where you are now, where it, you know, from what we just looked at, there's no resistance currently. And, you know, again, I'm sure there'll probably be some fighting that'll happen, and maybe it's just at this specific time during the day. But it does make you wonder on, you know, maybe that's not a bad idea, because remember, this is the thing. Zone 1 is not really, for all intents and purposes, where the bulk of the fighting, in my opinion, should happen. The bulk of the fighting, to me, really should be happening in Zone 3, right? The idea is that you want people to progress into Zone 3 so you can fight in Zone 3 and then also fight throughout Zone 2 and then potentially fighting throughout Zone 1. But that would take a while to do. And because it would take a while, more players would be able to enjoy longer fights, more opportunities to counter, more resistance for a longer period of time. With the way that you end up seeing the TA Union side playing this out, which I'm sure would have been the exact same thing that the SS Union side would have played it out, and I'm sure other groups or alliances and other kingdoms are doing it, is you're kind of getting like the quick and dirty, right? The fastest way possible to basically lower your enemy's morale and their resistance, which is just doing some quick CF drops near their forts, taking their passes, killing everything around it, and then doing a quick CF drops over here and rinse, washing, and repeating. And I think the thing is, because there's no home, this is my thing, because there's no home kingdom in Call of Dragons, right? Or let's just say the idea of a home kingdom, and then you go to like this KVK world like you do in Rock, because there isn't that, and then you also know that you're going to get merged into a KVK environment. The challenge here is that this game is, to me, at least with how the merge season is working and how pretty much the home kingdom works as well, or your starting kingdom, is that it's playing out like Infinity Kingdom's KVKs, which is where everyone basically does the crushing, who can do the crushing, in Zone 1, and there's nothing left to do after that. Instead, what they really should do is find a way to limit, to really make it hard, or I should say harder, for alliances to just crush through Zone 1 and allow for that map to actually play out and the Augur Stone to play out. That's kind of the whole point, right? Otherwise, why would they develop an Augur Stone? Why would they even open Zone 2 and Zone 3 if they didn't want people to go there, right? Because if you think about it, based on how this is playing out in SS1-2 for the second season, there's almost no reason for arguably anyone to go to Zone 2 or Zone 3 for any action outside of going and capping some Magma Daemons. I mean, you could do that obviously here, right, as an example. But being able to obviously go cap the other behemoths and then getting to Flame Dragon in Zone 3. But outside of that, right, at least with the pace and the way that this season is trending, right, why would anyone care to build in Zone 2 or Zone 3 for the sole purpose of doing PvP? And that's kind of the whole point when you really think about where CoD is going, at least when it comes to the merged kingdoms more specifically. And with the way things are playing out, it's kind of deterring people, and most likely will deter people away from that when they can just kind of do all their fighting in Zone 1. So, yeah, as I'm playing this out in my mind, do I now think that that suggestion of limiting center fortresses being able to be dropped anywhere in Zone 1 and only allowing for center fortresses to be placed wherever within your starting region? Yeah, that actually sounds really good to me right now, right? But it's for the right reasons. And I think that's something that has to be explained in a suggestion, right? So maybe I'll type something up and we'll suggest that and then promote it. Because, again, you want to be eloquent and you want to be detailed with what you're putting out. And making sure that you are providing good reasonings and good explanations for why something like that would want to exist. And I think that what we're showing here in this video is almost kind of exhibit A of that. And of course, we'll have to see if this continues to play out the way that I think it's going to play out. And I'm sure probably some others may think it's going to play out. Because if so, that's really going to hammer the point home, right? And so it is. And I think with the removal of unions, again, I'm still on that side of I wish unions stayed in the game. I just really loved the idea of it. I mean, at least for a little while, and then kind of seeing how it develops, gather some more data. I just don't think that there was really anything wrong with the union system, and it just felt as though they scrapped it too early when it didn't really have an opportunity to kind of see its full lifespan play out. With that being said, that is going to do it for me. I want to hear what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree with the idea of the center fortresses only being able to be moved within the starting region? And then if you want to expand beyond your starting region, you have to do it the old-fashioned way and flag out, therefore trying to promote more map progression and natural development of actually being able to play the game and the kingdom, where you can try and have those fights in either Zone 2 or you wait and you have those big fights in Zone 3. And then after that you have the fights in Zone 2 and potentially Zone 1, right? It's not like the fights are not going to come. It just may take a little bit to get there. And while you do that, you allow all the players in the kingdom to progress and develop their accounts a little bit more. They can train more troops. This just basically means they'll be able to fight longer, right? To me, I just think there's a lot more pros than cons and more inherent benefits. But what do you think? How do you think the war is playing out right now? Do you think that at this point it's kind of Dunsky and the TA Union side is really just going to kind of, again, have some fun with it? Will they just keep crushing? Do you think that the SS Union side with S5, S6, NT45 is going to be able to maybe put up some fights, hold some resistance? Now, let me state as well, I have no doubt in my mind that they are going to keep fighting. I'm not saying they're throwing in the towel at all. On the contrary, I think they're going to keep fighting to their heart's content. I think they're going to keep resisting. I think they're going to keep trying to do counterplays, just like we ended up seeing from the SS1 alliances with the likes of like the POSs from Season 1, and dear Lord, I'm forgetting their other names, but you guys know what I mean, right? Those alliances that are still, that we're still fighting all the way up until the end of the season that I absolutely love. They just never threw the towel in. So I don't think that they're going to do that. But how do you kind of just see the macro, right? The overview, the high level, if you will, of it playing out now, right? And anything else you guys got, let me know in the comments down below. I always love to read those. That is going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.